Japanese lawyers are women. But trend has been shifting. A couple days ago, there are more than 2,000 people who took the bar exams in Japan. And 20% of those people who passed the bar exam are women. And also the trend of women entering into law schools, actually, percentage-wise, is getting higher and higher. So in the future, I will see that just like the United States, the majority of applicants, as well as those being admitted to law schools, are women, right? Same as other professional schools, including the medical school, as well as the business. So I think the same kind of trend will continue in Japan. And also I want to respond to what you said in the beginning, the Japanese are skeptical, cynical, and that's true. Last July, I had a chance to talk to South Korea Supreme Court Judge, Mr. Kim. And I told him that he presented in his co-authored paper that South Korea is going to start the jury trial next year. And I told him if I was born in Japan, in South Korea, and knew the jury trial will start, I probably have never left South Korea. Japan, there was no future in terms of those who really tried to see some changes in the legal system or in any system. And that's one of the reasons I left Japan. I came to the United States and became a professor. But thinking back and looking at the actual judicial reforms, which started like late 1980s and beginning of 1990s, and I was also skeptical, cynical about the ways in which Japanese government is trying to introduce this slave participation system. I said, no. And law has passed 2 years ago, 2004, to introduce the so-called quasi-jury system, as well as the new law has passed to now revise the old Japanese grand jury system called Kensa Shinsakai. And when I started looking at the changes being introduced, I started to see some promising light, especially not in terms of the quasi-jury system, but in terms of the grand jury system. And since Frank has talked about the criminal jury as well as prospective civil jury in Thailand, as well as Eva was talking about the lay assessor system in China, so I'm going to change a little bit of attention from the petty jury to a grand jury. And I also did an extensive survey in the United States as well as in Japan about looking at the legal consciousness. And that's being tabulated and extensively discussed in my paper. And so I will not discuss that, but instead I will talk about two different types of judicial systems being introduced. Okay, this is a unique moment in the history of Japanese legal system, as the Japanese government decided to introduce Saiban Inseibo, or petted grand jury system, and will begin its first trial in 2009. The introduction of a first quasi-jury trial also marks the start of yet another newly revised grand jury system called Kensa Shinsakai, also known as the Prosecutorial Review Commissions, or PRC. The revised PRC law in 2004 mandated that the resolution be given a legally binding status and that the law be put into effect in May 2009, when the first quasi-jury trial begins in Japan. While much attention has been paid to the petty quasi-jury system, I argue that the newly revised grand jury system, i.e. the PRC system, may have far greater impact in democratizing the criminal process and building broader public confidence in the system of justice in Japan. While a petty jury consists of both lay and professional judges to determine final verdicts and appropriate sentences, the PRC is solely composed of 11 randomly chosen citizens from the local community. The system is similar to that of America's civil grand jury in examining and inspecting the proper functioning of local public officers, including the DA's office. Also similar to the criminal grand jury, the PRC also has an influence on the decision to indict. First, it is important to note that Japan once had a criminal-headed jury trial. The jury law was originally introduced under the leadership of Prime Minister Hiroshi. Japan began to use jury trial in 1928, but the system was suspended in 1943 due to World War II. While the government stated that it would reinstate the jury system after the war, the all-citizen jury is yet to be instituted in Japan. The PRC, on the other hand, was originally created by the Allied forces occupying Japan after World War II. General MacArthur saw it as an important alternative system to guarantee fair execution of the right of public action by reflecting the public will. With this Allied influence on its creation, the PRC became a hybrid institution, adapting the American civil and criminal grand jury system into the Japanese cultural and legal context. Given the fact that 99.99% of all indicted criminal cases result in conviction, the Commission's ex post examination of the appropriateness of those prosecution decisions became quite important for checking prosecutorial exercise of discretion and power. A total of 2001 commissions were then established in each of Japan's 50 district court jurisdictions. The commission only begins the investigation process when the victim, proxy, or the commission itself brings a complaint and applies for a commission hearing. The commission is comprised of 11 citizens randomly selected from the electoral register, is appointed to a 6-month term, and has the power to review whether or not disposition of non-prosecution made by the public prosecutors is appropriate. Since 1949, nearly 500,000 Japanese served as a PRC members. Similar to the American grand jury, the commission investigates the cases in private, summoning witnesses for examination, questioning prosecutors, and asking for expert advice. After group deliberation on each case, the Commission submits one of the following 3 recommendations. 1, non-indictment is proper. 2, non-indictment is improper. And 3, indictment is proper. A majority vote is needed for the first 2 opinions, while the special majority with at least 8 votes is needed for the third option. The Commission then delivers written recommendation to the prosecutor's office. However, since the prosecutor has the power to indict, the PRC recommendations have been regarded merely advisory, not legally binding. Beginning in the late 1980s and 1990s, the pressure to change the existing legal system, including the introduction of lay judges in criminal cases, began to emerge. The judicial reform then became part of the national agenda, and the demand for judicial reform came from several sources, including 1, the Ministry of Justice, 2, the Secretariat of the Supreme Court, 3, the Japanese Federation of Bar Associations, 4, the Federation of Economic Organizations, or KEDANE, or the Japanese Association of Corporate Executives, or Keizai Doryukai. Those are 2 of Japan's most influential business organizations. And 5, the Liberal Democratic Party and the New Clean Government Party, the ruling political alliance in the Japanese government. Those 5 interest groups acted as an exclusive set of policymakers in the regulation of legal profession and the formulation of policies impacting the legal process, including the introduction of the system of popular legal participation. In 1999, in order to create the official guideline for Japan's judicial reform, late Prime Minister Koguchi established the Justice System Reform Council and submitted its final report in 2001, including the creation of the quasi-jury system and the recommendation to give legally binding status to PRC resolution. In April 2002, the Office for the Promotion of Justice System Reform was established in the Cabinet Office to implement specific recommendations, including the specific number of lay and professional judges for the quasi-jury system, 2-step approach to give the legally binding status to PRC recommendation. The Diet passed the proposal on May 21st, 2004. There are 2 different panels of the quasi-jury. In contested cases, the quasi-jury panel is made up of 3 judges and 6 lay people who deliberate together on verdict and on sentence. In uncontested cases, the panel is made up of one judge and 4 layperson, people who deliberate together. Since there is no plea bargaining in Japan, both panels are responsible not only for fact-finding, but for decisions on application of law and determination of penalties. As for the PRC resolution, if the PRC decides that prosecution is proper, the prosecutors will be obliged to reconsider their decision, although the Commission's decision is not legally binding. If the prosecutors still decide not to prosecute, or if they fail to indict within 3 months, prosecutors will be invited to explain their inaction or no-indictment decision to the Commission. The Commission will then re-examine the case and can make a legally binding decision in favor of an indictment. In the event of such a decision, the court will appoint a lawyer who will perform the prosecutor's role until a ruling is reached. The new revision of the PRC law thus created the following 4 significant advantages in the administration of justice. 1, Commission will become a legitimate institution with a binding authority to serve as an important public check on prosecutors' power. 2, the Commission also will serve as a mechanism that acts as an important check on the local government, as the Commission will be able to analyze non-indictment decisions on public officers or political groups against which complaints were filed by the public. 3, the availability of registering complaints can help protect and restore victims' rights. And finally, 4, with well-organized and well-coordinated publicity efforts, the Commission can promote active legal participation of ordinary citizens from local communities. The most recent example of the ways in which the PRC may play a greater role in reflecting the justice against the governmental abuse of power involves the case in which a group of teachers at Tokyo municipal high schools who refused to salute the rising sun flag and sing the national anthem at graduation or enrollment ceremonies were dismissed by local governor Shintaro Ishihara and his officers. Since the end of World War II, Japan has been quite ambivalent towards its flag and anthem, and the Japanese government finally made them Japanese legal national symbols in 1999. In October 2003, the Tokyo Metropolitan Board of Education also made it compulsory to rise, face the flag, and sing the anthem at the graduation and enrollment ceremonies in public schools, with disobedience punishable. As a result, in the year 2004 alone, 243 teachers have been punished for their disobedience, and 67 more have been warned as they failed to instruct their students to do so. And as of February 2006, a total of 24 school teachers have been fired. The dismissed teachers, their families, and their lawyers filed a complaint to the prosecutor's office in December 2004, alleging official misfeasance by Governor Ishihara and 2 superintendents of education. The Section 242 of Japan's Criminal Code of Procedure mandates that the prosecutor cannot refuse the complaint and must initiate criminal investigation accordingly. The teachers and supporters, however, had to file complaints 5 more times until the prosecutors finally agreed to meet the teachers and their lawyers in early 2005. On December 28th, the prosecutor announced they decided not to indict Ishihara and others. The dismissed teachers and their support group then filed a complaint to the PRC in Tokyo on February 17, 2006. While the PRC's decision on the complaint has not been announced, the PRC will have a tremendous potential to exercise its oversight beyond the review of the prosecutor's discretion. In response to the prosecutor's no-indictment decision on the case involving Governor Ishihara and his associates, the PRC positioned itself properly and powerfully to review the appropriateness of the governmental decision to legislate nationalism and fire a group of Japanese the national anthem during the high school ceremony. For 55 years, the Commission investigated more than 144,000 cases. More than 90% of them were requested by victims or proxy. Approximately 9% of them were investigations initiated by the commissions. In terms of the recommendations, the Commission recommended the prosecutors to reconsider or indict in about 12% of the cases. However, among those 12% of the PRC's recommendations to reconsider or indict, prosecutors took their recommendation in only 7% of those cases, meaning that the prosecutors rarely acted on the recommendations by the PRC. The legally binding status may change the ways in which prosecutors exercise their discretion in criminal cases in the future. Despite the significant role that PRC can play in the administration of justice, there are 4 major shortcomings that need to be addressed. Those limitations include: 1, PRC system and its duty have not been well publicized, and many citizens remain unfamiliar with or even unaware of the system. 2, infrequent use of the commissions due to the poor attendance, especially in rural areas, further contributed to the PRC's relative obscurity. 3, people with legitimate claims fail to use the system because of its obscurity, unfamiliarity, and underutilization. And 4, there is no structural incentive for prosecutors' office or the Ministry of Justice to promote and publicize PRC duty to the local community, as the PRC's objection to prosecutors' no indictment decisions may be seen as people's criticism of the discretion exercised by the prosecutors, who are career bureaucrats in the Ministry of Justice. Okay, conclusion. Because of the legally binding authority given to the PRC resolution and its power to examine conduct of government officials, the PRC may have a tremendous potential to exercise its oversight power beyond the review of the prosecutor's decision-making process. While there have been allegations of prosecutors' failure to prosecute politicians, police officers, former prosecutors, and those concerned with powerful economic and financial organizations, the PRC has now positioned itself properly and powerfully to review the prosecutor's no indictment decisions against those political elites.